Good afternoon. My name is Hugh Lufton. I'm a planning consultant based in Stafford. About 2 months ago, I made a short video and uploaded it to YouTube about the emerging housing planning situation in Eccleshall village, 7 to 8 miles west of Stafford. This video is to update the situation because those planning applications that covered a number of sites continue to slowly progress. There's been various comments made from statutory parties and other objections raised by members of the public and neighbours and so on, and I've reassessed them and have some further comments to make on those applications. A friend of mine asked me why I'd made the initial video a couple of months ago. What possible interest did I have in housing development in Eccleshall? Suffice to say, as I say, I'm a planning consultant. I've worked in Stafford for over 30 years now. I've done quite a few development schemes in Stafford Borough over that time. I presently have a sort of background interest in a site in Stafford, and as a consequence, obviously, like to know what's going on, what planning applications are making progress, and what the situation is looking like in terms of the ability for developers to meet the housing requirements required of government policy that's expressed through the local plan. This video is going to cover quite a few sites. In fact, I'm going to cover all the sites that I can see that are major residential applications in planning terms that are currently, if you like, on the book. They've not been determined yet. I'm going to cover, as I say, the whole borough, but I'm going to fragment this video up so that if people want to pick out a particular site and any comments on that, they can do that, and I'll do that before I upload it to YouTube. So I'm going to start with Eccleshall, and then I'm going to move on to the other areas of the borough which have currently got outstanding residential applications. So starting, as I say, with Eccleshall, there's a number of applications of interest at the moment. To the west of Eccleshall, there's a application for 150 new dwellings by Taylor Wimpey. That's land north of Shaw's Lane. It's towards Alford Heath. Now this site, my overall concern of this site is the access arrangements. The access is off Shaw's Lane, and it looks inadequate. Shaw's Lane looks like an inadequate road to service this scale of development. I don't think it's been thoroughly thought through. The most recent position is still that the County Highway Authority hasn't commented yet on the application. So they're taking some time because this application has been on the book since December of last year. There's other issues have been raised regarding investigation of contaminants, so below surface contaminants, and the environmental health on the 26th of March requested an intrusive contamination investigation, so in effect a borehole investigation. So as it stands, this application is still being held up. The policy response from the Borough Council, so the policy officers, is the same as it is for a number of the applications in Eccleshall, that they object to it, but on the basis of the lack of social and service infrastructure, and they can't see a clear mechanism for those contributions to provide that infrastructure to be made, and that's a consistent objection across a number of sites. Moving on from the west of Eccleshall to the north of Eccleshall, there is currently an application for 71 dwellings from Phillips Muller Property. That extends a development that's already been built out by Phillips and Muller, and it extends that further north into the floodplain, essentially the floodplain of the River Sow. There is obviously some concerns regarding the ability to mitigate flood risk from that site, and as of the end of April, it appears that earlier objections raised by the local lead flood authority, which is Staffordshire County Council, have not yet been addressed. So again, this has been standing off since October of last year, when this application was validated, so it's still taking some time. I question whether these issues can be resolved. I mean, they're just reading all of the information from the local authority, Severn Trent Water, the local lead flood authority. I don't think there's an adequate engineering solution that can mitigate these issues. They may be able to mitigate them to a standard that the developer might wish to go ahead with, but I doubt they can be mitigated to an acceptable standard for the local population and protect that part of Eccleshall from flooding. The illustrative layout for this site shows extensive areas of green to the north, and then they're restraining development to the south part of the site, immediately adjacent to the existing housing, and that's at a very high density. So there clearly sort of some recognition of the floodplain area, but I simply don't think there's enough, and I don't feel that this site is likely to proceed. Moving to the east of Eccleshall, there's a site south of the Stone Road. It immediately abuts the existing urban area. Now, this is an odd situation where it just looks like there hasn't been collaborative working between adjoining landowners and adjoining developers, because there is a further site to the east for 480 dwellings, and there's just no relationship between what the developers are indicating on this site for 140. This is Bellway Homes. Further to the west, and the site further to the east. So there's no connection. There doesn't seem to be any attempt to, whether there's been any discussion about linking the internal road layout or looking at joint accesses or indeed anything. Really, it doesn't look very well planned. There is an outstanding response from the County Council Minerals about extracting sand and gravel. That's a fairly common objection, in fact. So it's not a sort of showstopper, but it's just one of the number of things that the developer would have to overcome to go forward and develop this site. I think there was a flood risk assessment done in April. It doesn't show any particular issues of flooding. There is some mild surface water flooding on the site, but I assume that could be mitigated. Of the current sort of patchwork framework, if you like, of sites outstanding, I think this is the most likely to get approval. And when I say get approval, considering this in the prospects of the developer appealing, if they got a refusal from the Borough Council, and the likelihood that this might survive the appeal process of all the Eccleshall sites, this one does look like the one that might be proportionate scale of development and might go ahead. But as I say, it doesn't seek to make any attempt to link to the further to the larger site, further to the east. Then there is a much larger site, as I say, a 400 dwelling application. The illustrative layout shows provision for a primary school, a medical centre and a retirement home. There's various concerns about this. I mean, I think proportionately it is just far too big at this point for this scale of development to be proceeding in Eccleshall, given the size of the existing village and its functions and service provision, the level of public transport that it has. It just looks wrong. I mean, it just looks too much. I think there's a lot of objections from local people about concerns about the scale of the development and the overall impact that it would have on the nature of the village, and saying that they believe it's an overdevelopment. It's quite hard to express exactly what that is, but I agree with them. I think it's right. I think 480 new houses built by one developer at one time to the west of Eccleshall would be way too much. It would change the character of the village completely, and it's quite unprecedented in history that such a scale of development has happened. There's an outstanding issue in relation to junction 14 of the M6. There's been a fair bit of correspondence between the applicants, consultants on highways, and the National Highway Authority about concerns about traffic at junction 14 of the M6. And there is still, at the moment, the National Highway Authority is upholding a technical objection, and further at April 2026 they've asked for 3 further months for those parties to try and resolve that issue and come up with some sort of solution that would look at the capacity issues that this development would have on junction 14 of the M6. So, you know, junction 14 is some distance away, but it's quite clear that the scale of this application in that position will have some impact on it. Another issue, significant issue, is the status of the spine road that's shown on the illustrative layout, and what impact that could possibly have on alleviating any of the difficulties of congestion and restriction in the village centre of Eccleshall. As it is, the illustrative layout suggests that would simply be a development spine road, so you wouldn't expect that to be a through route. So you wouldn't expect that to in any way sort of sensibly serve as some sort of bypass, if you like, to Eccleshall village centre. And I simply don't think it does, and I don't think it would do. And I think that the layout that's been put forward, and any development that would proceed on that, is not going to provide something which is tantamount to a bypass for Eccleshall village centre. It will just be a residential road, at best, a spine road to the development, and I would imagine any prospective new residents wouldn't want to see that as a through road. They wouldn't want to see that becoming something more than that. So I don't think that what the developer has put forward is particularly helpful. So yes, I think I would assume that the local authority would reject that application, but we'll have to wait and see. So that's Eccleshall covered. There are other applications in Eccleshall, but they predate. I've been looking at a validation date for the applications of about October last year. I think there's one or two smaller applications that predate that sort of add to the overall Eccleshall housing figure that's or development dwellings figure that could be delivered by current outstanding applications. So just moving on in no particular order to other outstanding applications in Stafford Borough. There's a 61 dwelling application in Stafford off south of Radford Bank. When I was looking at this sort of really took me by surprise. The area is between, people will know, the BMW garage, and it's an area of land that's green and treed, and it's between the BMW garage and then the bottom of the housing as you go up the hill. It appears that there's been obviously some discussion with Natural England about the status of its impact on nature and conservation. The planning officer sought a response from Staffordshire Wildlife Trust, and at the moment I can't see they've actually had one. There doesn't appear to be a concern about flooding. There is, I would have thought there was quite a difficulty in the highways matters and the access off Radford Bank. It looks quite difficult, the access point there. Radford Bank is exceptionally busy. There's a major toucan crossing just by the place where this site will be accessed. I think some of the highways matters might be quite difficult to resolve. Moving to Stone, the town of Stone, there's two applications of significance. One is for 95 dwellings from Richborough Estates. This is off the Uttoxeter Road. It's been in the offing for some time. I think Richborough have had previous attempts at planning application. I think they had a refusal a few years ago. One of the significant issues here is the West Coast Main Line, which crosses the Uttoxeter Road just below the site, has a level crossing. As HS2 is planned, HS2 trains as they come up to Lichfield or as they will come up to Lichfield on the new HS2 line, will drop down onto the West Coast Main Line and continue their journeys northwards at normal speeds, normal rail speeds. My understanding has always been that level crossing, because of that, will be down much more of the time than it's up. In fact, I think at one point, certainly when I'd read a previous application, it was down for something like 47 minutes in every hour because of the need to provide these very long lapse times for trains to pass safely. It doesn't appear at the moment from the correspondence with this application that Network Rail thinks that's a major concern, but all I can see at the moment is that there is a lengthy response from Network Rail, but they seem to just be requiring engagement with the applicant, presumably to try and resolve this issue of whether it can be resolved. The applicant has proposed mitigation by a safety camera, so it doesn't seem quite adequate to me, but clearly that's a matter for negotiation between Network Rail and the applicants, and then for the Borough Council to be satisfied that a satisfactory resolution has been reached. The other application in Stone of significance is 140 dwellings. Came forward in May last year. Taylor Wimpey, land off Marlborough Road, Walton. That land is on the edge of the existing urban area, so it's on the edge of what's already been built as new housing. It's somewhat distanced from the main road. I think again of the current sort of framework of applications there are, this one is more likely to go ahead in my view. There isn't an obvious flood risk issue. The policy response from the borough has been that they seem to support this application as subject to securing adequate social and service infrastructure, so an adequate contribution towards those infrastructures through the Section 106 agreement. The Highway Authority, however, have recommended refusal on a basis of highway capacity concerns, inadequate mitigation. So I don't know. It seems more likely that one may go ahead. Moving then to Hixon, there's an application for the demolition of the former hospital buildings and 86 new dwellings. That's from Bellway. That's east of Church Lane and Egg Lane. This one doesn't seem to be too many major outstanding issues. There was some concern raised by Staffordshire County Council as a lead local flood authority about surface water flooding. I'm not sure, can't entirely see that that's been resolved, but it may be possible to resolve. Again, there is a policy response, basis of lack of social and service infrastructure. But this one is it's at least partly a brownfield site, if not wholly a brownfield site in Hixon. So that's, as I say, for 86 dwellings. Moving to Gnosall, there is an application for 90 dwellings in an area called known as the Horseshoe or Audmore, which is to the north of Gnosall village. There are concerns here there's some concerns about flood risk. There are seem to be significant concerns actually about mitigation for bats and concerns about bats on the site. Those are usually things that can be mitigated against, although these issues seem a lot more prominent on this site than I've certainly seen on others. There is concerns over surface water flooding. There's been a lot of evidence put forward by local residents about surface water flooding on this site, and it's a matter that the flood authority, the local lead flood authority, and Severn Trent seem to be taking quite seriously. So I think that could be quite difficult to resolve. Moving to Barlaston, there is an application for I can't remember, I haven't put the fees down on my own table here, but I think it's about 60 dwellings. That's Inglewood Investment Company. It's land between the Canal and the Old Road. This site, and it's the first time that I've seen this, I think, in Stafford Borough, has been accepted by the policy officers as meeting the terms of the definition of grey belt under paragraph 155 of the National Planning Policy Framework. So I think, to all intents and purposes, they seem to be saying that they're happy with it. so I can see that one probably going ahead. And then moving to Weston, there's an application for 100 dwellings, land off Dickey's Lane. This has been on the book for some while. July last year, it was validated. There is, at the moment, as of April this year, still concerns here about resolving and needing further information about underground issues and local contamination. So there's a request for further testing of ground gas, soil and water contamination before the application could be determined. So that's going to hold things up for a little bit longer. And there's requests for highways mitigation, not that significant. There isn't a policy objection that appears to have, well, it was a local plan allocation in the last local plan, so policy have raised no issue. So that's it. That's just a summary of the situation. What I will do is I'm going to flag point each of these sites, so obviously breaks up the video. You can just pick out the bits that are relevant to any site that you're interested in. Okay, many thanks.